Good morning. It is Thursday, January 29, 2026. And if you are staring at your terminal this morning, or just, checking your phone and feeling a distinct sense of whiplash, take a breath. You are definitely not the only one. We are waking up the morning after a super Wednesday that really lived up to the hype.
Oh, it did. And quite frankly, the dust is nowhere near settled.
Not even close.
I mean, we saw the S&P 500 briefly. It just kissed that massive 7,000 milestone.
A huge psychological barrier.
Right, one we've been eyeing for months. And then, you see the futures market get incredibly messy after the bell.
Messy is a polite way to put it. We have just a massive agenda for this deep dive.
We do.
You need to unpack a 24-hour period that basically rewrote the narrative for the entire first quarter. We're talking about a Federal Reserve decision that held steady, but revealed some deep, deep cracks in the foundation.
And then you have the tech earnings dump, pitting Microsoft against Meta in a battle of capital expenditure philosophies.
Plus some truly chaotic signals on the U.S. dollar coming straight out of the White House.
And honestly, if there is one thread tying all of this together, from the Fed to big tech, it's the cost of growth.
Yes.
Whether that's the cost of borrowing money or the astronomical cost of building the AI infrastructure that everyone is demanding.
That is the CapEx conundrum we teased, and we're going to get to the bottom of why spending billions tanked one stock, but, rallied another overnight. But first,
got to start with the Fed.
We have to start with the main event from yesterday afternoon, the Federal Reserve.
Right. So the headline number was exactly what the market priced in. The Fed held interest rates steady yesterday, January 28th.
No surprise there.
No. The market had that at, nearly 100% probability?
But this was not a boring hold. Usually when the Fed holds, it's a non-event, bland statement, everyone goes home. This felt heavy.
It was incredibly heavy. First, just look at the vote itself. We're so used to unanimous decisions from this Fed.
Or maybe one rogue voter.
Right, one on the fringe. This time, we saw genuine dissent. We had 2 votes favoring a cut.
And we know there's been chatter about potential dissenters. Governor Bowman has been pretty vocal about her concerns.
Exactly. And for you listening, why does a dissenting vote matter? It matters because it shows the consensus is fracturing. It tells us that inside that committee room, there's a real heated debate going on.
A debate about whether the labor market is softening too fast versus whether inflation is actually stuck.
They are not reading from the same sheet of music anymore, and that creates uncertainty.
But the real drama wasn't even the vote count. It was the press conference. I've seen a lot of Fed pressers. The vibe yesterday, analysts were calling Chair Powell's appearance a hostage video.
It was tense. I mean, you cannot ignore the context. You have a sitting Fed chair facing Department of Justice subpoenas over renovations to the Fed's headquarters.
Which he obviously refused to comment on. But the elephant wasn't just in the room. It was sitting on the table.
Oh, absolutely. And then he dropped a line that I think is going to be in the history books. When asked for advice for his successor,
he didn't talk about interest rates. He didn't talk about inflation targets or the neutral rate.
No, he just said, stay out of elected politics.
Which, given the environment, is about as loaded as a statement can get.
It's a shield and a sword, right? He's trying to assert independence, but he's also acknowledging that the Fed is under siege.
And on the same day, you have President Trump openly roasting him.
Jerome Too Late Powell, that was the nickname.
That was the one.
Right. The president's argument is straightforward. He believes inflation is, in his words, following nature, coming down on its own. He's arguing high rates are just punitive at this point.
That Powell is keeping them high to intentionally damage the administration's economic record.
Or just out of incompetence. And then he took it a step further. Teased that a new Fed chair announcement is coming soon.
Soon could mean next week. And we're hearing names. Kevin Warsh, Kevin Hassett, circulating.
Right.
Let's pause on that. For the institutional investors listening, why does the mere announcement of a replacement rattle the bond market so much right now?
It's the concept of the shadow chair. If Trump announces a successor now, the market might just start treating Powell as a lame duck immediately.
They'll stop listening to Powell's guidance.
And start pricing in Warsh's or Hassett's probable policies. And the big fear, the reason the long end of the bond market is so nervous, is independence.
Independence is the bedrock of the currency. If the market thinks the next chair takes marching orders from the Oval Office,
then the risk premium on U.S. Treasuries goes up. Investors demand more yield to hold U.S. debt if they think the central bank is just going to print money to please the president.
So Powell was trying to defend that independence yesterday, emphasizing Data dependence.
But when the administration is this hostile, sticking to the data starts to look like political defiance.
So we have a Fed standing its ground, staring down a political cannon.
Yeah.
That's the macro backdrop. But let's pivot to where the liquidity was really moving last night.
The Mag 7 earnings dump.
The moment of truth for the AI trade. This was fascinating.
Yep.
We saw two tech giants, Microsoft and Meta, tell basically the same story about spending money.
And the market reacted in completely opposite ways.
Let's start with the one that got punished, Microsoft.
So Microsoft beat on the top line. Revenue came in at $81.7 billion versus the $80.3 billion estimate.
Okay.
And Azure, which is really the only number people care about right now, is the proxy for AI adoption, grew at 38%.
Which met expectations.
It met them, exactly.
So, beat on revenue, met on cloud growth. And the stock drops, what, 4 to 7% in the after hours? Explain the disconnect.
It's the price for perfection problem. When you are trading at these multiples, meeting expectations is basically a miss. But deeper than that, it's about capacity. Investors dug into the call and realized that Microsoft's growth is actually being throttled. They literally cannot build data centers fast enough.
So the demand is there, but they just can't supply it.
Correct. They have a massive backlog. Over $600 billion in remaining performance obligations. RPO.
And RPO is basically signed contracts. The cash hasn't been collected yet, service hasn't been delivered.
Exactly. It's future revenue, locked in. And that $600 billion number is huge. It's a massive safety net. But the market is impatient. They see Microsoft spending billions on CapEx, and they want to see that translate into an immediate blowout return today.
It's a show-me-the-money market. They're worried the spending is outrunning the revenue recognition.
Right. The fear is that Microsoft is burning cash to build infrastructure that won't pay off for years. They see the construction cranes, but they want to see the profits.
Okay, so hold that thought. Microsoft gets punished for high spending and capacity constraints. Now, look at Meta.
The divergence here is staggering.
Meta beats on revenue, $59.9 billion. The ad engine is humming, but they dropped the bomb on guidance. Their 2026 CapEx forecast.
$115 to $135 billion.
That number is astronomical. Just to put that in context for you, $135 billion is more than the GDP of most countries. That is nation-state level spending.
On servers, chips, and concrete.
And yet, the stock pops. Up 3 to 8%. Why did the market forgive Mark Zuckerberg for threatening to spend $135 billion while they punish Satya Nadella?
It comes down to two things, the narrative and the cash cow. Zuckerberg has successfully framed this massive spend not as a gamble, but as a survival mode. He is telling investors, if we have the most compute, we win. If we don't, we die.
Fear is a powerful motivator.
It is. But more importantly, they have the engine to pay for it without asking investors for patience. The core ad business generated $58.1 billion in revenue alone. It is just printing money. That cash flow is funding the AI war.
So it effectively subsidizes all the R&D.
Precisely. And remember, Reality Labs, the metaverse division that was losing $5 billion a quarter.
The thing that used to drive Wall Street absolutely crazy.
No, they still lost about that much this quarter. But nobody cares anymore. Why?
Because the spending has shifted branding.
Exactly. It's no longer a metaverse vanity project. It's AI infrastructure. Investors are saying, okay, take our money, build the data centers because we believe AI improves ad targeting.
It's amazing how a label changes the perception. Metaverse is bad spending. AI is good spending.
Even if you're buying the exact same GPUs.
And before we move on, we have to give a nod to IBM.
The quiet winner in the corner.
Beat on revenue, $19.7 billion. But the number that really stood out was free cash flow, $7.5 billion.
Which is why the stock is trading higher. In a market where people are freaking out about valuations and what if, IBM is just boringly returning cash to shareholders. It's a reminder that when volatility spikes, boring becomes a distinct asset class.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of companies that are definitely not boring, let's talk Tesla.
The Tesla turnaround, or at least the narrative turnaround.
This was a surprise. They actually missed slightly on revenue, $24.9 billion, but they beat on earnings per share, 50 cents versus 45.
But the number everyone is circling on their spreadsheets is the gross margin.
2.1%.
Which beat the 17.1% estimate. That is a massive jump.
It changes the entire conversation. Think about the last 12 months for Tesla. The bear case was simple.
Right. Demand is drying up, they're cutting prices to move metal, and their margins are collapsing.
They were becoming just a car
Yes,
company.
exactly. This 20.1% print puts a floor under that fear. It suggests they've stopped the bleeding, they've stabilized the core auto business profitability.
But Elon Musk, in true fashion, didn't really want to talk about selling Model Ys.
No, he wanted to talk about robots.
The pivot is complete. In his eyes, Tesla is no longer a car company. It's a robotics and AI entity. They confirmed production of the Optimus robots for 2026,
With a capacity goal of 1 million units.
which is incredibly ambitious, bordering on sci-fi timelines.
Right, but they are putting money behind it, investing $2 billion into xAI, Musk's separate AI company.
Now, we have to mention, this raises governance questions. You have a public company, Tesla, investing billions into a private company, xAI.
Owned by the same CEO. In a different market, shareholders might revolt over that.
But right now,
Right now, the bulls see it as reinforcing the ecosystem. They're buying the dream. The stock is up because the core business cars stopped bleeding, which gives investors permission to believe in the dream business robots again.
and they are ramping the Cybercab and Semi, so there's product movement.
Right.
Okay, so Tesla says the future is robots.
Mm.
Meta says the future is AI compute. But if you want to know if any of this is real, you don't look at the software guys.
You look at the machine makers. You look at ASML.
And we got news from the European session that ASML didn't just beat estimates, they obliterated them.
Obliterated is the right word. They posted 13.2 billion euros in bookings. The estimate was 6.8 billion.
They basically doubled the forecast. So explain the significance of bookings for ASML.
ASML makes the lithography machines, the incredibly complex tools that TSMC, Samsung, and Intel use to actually print the chips. A booking today means a machine delivered in, 12 to 18 months?
So this is a crystal ball into 2027.
Exactly. If ASML is seeing record bookings now, it means the big fabricators are seeing concrete demand for 2026 and 2027 capacity. It confirms the AI hardware boom is nowhere near over.
It connects directly back to that CapEx we talked about with Meta. Meta says we're spending $135 billion, and ASML says we just received orders for billions.
The circle is complete. It validates the spending. It's a very bullish signal for NVIDIA and the broader semiconductor complex. Even if we see some weakness in handset demand from, say, Skyworks or Qorvo, the high-end AI compute demand is rock solid.
The picks and shovels trade is still alive and well.
It sure is.
Now let's zoom out. We've got the Fed, we've got tech, but we also have Washington, D.C. causing some serious headaches for anyone trading currencies.
The dollar yo-yo.
I mean, talk about mixed messaging. We had President Trump come out and explicitly say he's comfortable with the dollar dropping,
He used the phrase, seek its own level.
which markets immediately interpreted as the president wants a weaker dollar to help exports. And the reaction was,
Instant sell-off. The dollar index dropped. But then
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent walks it back, goes on the wires touting a strong dollar policy.
and the dollar bounces right back up.
For a U.S. institutional investor or a CFO of a multinational, this volatility is just a nightmare.
It injects a massive uncertainty tax into the market. Think about Microsoft again. They earn a huge chunk of revenue overseas. If the dollar crashes, their overseas earnings look great when converted back.
But if it spikes, their products become too expensive for foreign buyers. You can't hedge if you don't know the policy.
Exactly. And when there is currency debasement risk and geopolitical chaos, where does the money go?
Gold.
Hitting all-time highs, up about 6% recently. It's functioning exactly as it says on the tin.
A classic hedge.
It's telling us that despite the stock market highs, there's a deep underlying anxiety about the stability of the fiat system.
Speaking of government policy, we got more details on these Trump accounts yesterday.
This is one of the most fascinating policy experiments we've seen in decades. So the mechanism is a $1,000 Treasury-funded seed for every child born during the administration.
And it's not just cash. It's invested in index funds, specifically the S&P 500.
With a $5,000 annual contribution cap, the rollout is planned for July 4th.
Very symbolic timing. Senator Ted Cruz was pretty vocal about this.
He called it creating a generation of capitalists. The political philosophy is to tether the financial well-being of the entire population directly to the performance of the equity market.
But look at the market mechanics. If this passes, you are creating a massive, state-sponsored, structural bid for the S&P 500.
It basically mandates flows into the market. Every baby born is a buyer of the S&P. Now, whether it passes the long-term fiscal smell test is a fierce debate. but for the market right now.
Traders are looking at this as a long-term, bullish structural change, a backstop.
It's almost like a sovereign wealth fund, but distributed at the individual level.
That's a great way to put it. However, before we get to the fireworks on July 4th, we have to get through this Friday.
The S word is back, shut down.
Unfortunately, we are looking at a potential partial government shutdown.
And the sticking point isn't just about dollars and cents this time, right?
No, it's policy, specifically DHS funding. There's a massive standoff regarding the ICE shooting incidents in Minneapolis. It's a major sticking point.
So we have a Fed standoff, a currency standoff, and a budget standoff. Just a normal week.
Just another week on Wall Street in 2026. So let's synthesize this. We've got the S&P hovering near 7,000. We've got tech earnings that are messy, but fundamentally strong on AI. What's the signal through the noise?
If you step back, the signal is that the AI trade is maturing. It's shifting from hype to infrastructure. We're past the phase where you can just say AI and your stock goes up. Now, companies are spending real money, hundreds of billions, and the market is ruthlessly picking winners and losers based on who can monetize that spend and who can afford it.
Microsoft got dinged because the monetization wasn't fast enough. Meta got rewarded because their ad engine makes the spend look safe.
And Tesla and ASML prove the hardware cycle isn't dead, it's just getting started.
But the macro backdrop, the Fed and the White House tension, adds a layer of volatility that just wasn't there a year ago.
It means the easy mode of the bull market might be over. You have to be selective.
So keep your eyes on the screen today. We have jobless claims data coming up, which will feed right back into that Fed debate. And then we finish the big tech picture with Apple and Amazon earnings tomorrow.
That will be the final piece. Amazon's AWS numbers specifically will either confirm or deny what we saw with Microsoft Azure on cloud growth.
Before we sign off, I want to leave you with a thought. We talked about this CapEx war. Microsoft and Meta alone are guiding to spend over $100 billion combined on infrastructure.
It raises a provocative question. Who is the real winner here? Is it the software companies building the brains?
Or is it the energy providers and hardware makers feeding the beast? Because that money is leaving Microsoft's bank account, and it's going somewhere.
It's going to utilities, grid upgrades, chip fabs. The software margins might get squeezed by these costs.
But the infrastructure providers have a blank check, a transfer of wealth from software to hardware and energy.
Something to think about as you adjust your portfolios.
That is it for the deep dive on this Market Morning Wrap. For a detailed breakdown of all headlines mentioned today, please check the podcast description.